But I want to tell you about someone else today, for the reason being he's just passed away. Someone I didn't know, I did meet. I'm going to tell you that story. I did meet him. Didn't know him, won't pretend that I did, but I met him and did have an exchange with him. But despite that, massive influence on me. Massive. Which would not be apparent to anyone who's seen me work as a performer. It's not obvious. It's not there. You can't see it. The influence. It's more of it was more of an attitudinal thing than a performing style thing. Bloody hell! Didn't he influence some people? The most plagiarised man in comedy magic. We might get into that as well. But anyway, the legendary, the amazing Jonathan has finally had taken his last breath. It was a long time coming. He was a very ill man, and he defied the odds. You know, he fought it well. I mean, he was given a year, and he got another 6 or 7 out of life. And he lived well. He really lived well, man. He squeezed every last ounce out of it. I'll tell you, I first saw him on TV in the 90s. In the 90s, early noughties in the UK, he was on TV a lot. They'd fly him over to do an awful lot of stuff. And you'd see, but this is when TV was good. Like when Channel 4 actually had some decent stuff on. So you get, remember when it was Friday night was always, you get Friends and Frasier and Whose Line Is It Anyway? And then The Word or something naff, as it got later and later. But you'd occasionally get these shows. There was one called Viva Cabaret. That was a late night Channel 4 cabaret show set in a cabaret. And he was a regular guest on it. He did it every week. And I saw him on that. Oh man, I loved his work. But I've seen him before that because he would pop up on Comedy Central. We get the occasional American comedy special in the UK. But he'd fly over here a lot. He did a lot of UK television. This kind of madman. He would... I don't need to describe to you what he did. Just have a look on YouTube. It'd be doing him injustice. But I loved that style so much. I'm the antithesis of it, but watching it. Beautiful visual stuff. He built these props that were great. Like that one, he had this like glass jar. And it looked like it was full to the brim with powder. He'd stick a straw in it and up his nose and snort. And you'd see it go down while he was snorting it. Like he was snorting like 10 tons of cocaine. And then he'd carry on. And he'd had he'd pour like Windoline in his ear and spit it out of his mouth and then pour it into his hand and spit all this other weird shit. And then he'd say something mad to the camera like, I get the urge to run around naked and this stops me from streaking. I mean, off the wall. But I just loved him so much. It made me laugh, proper laugh. But it was the first time I became aware of someone that, like, he would appear on TV a lot and he'd repeat a lot of material. And my only sort of TV magic exposure at the time was Paul Daniels and a bit of Wayne Dobson. I think Wayne was about 2 series in or 1 series in, but they kind of burnt material. Every time you saw the show, it was something different, which is why it wasn't always, it was sometimes it was something that Daniels had been doing his whole life, and then it might be something he learned that morning, and you could tell. But Amazing Jonathan, he seemed to be able to do the same act on different shows. It was like he was being flown around the world just to do that. It was interesting to see that. That idea you could be a successful performer on television, but not have that, just doing the same thing. It was, I don't know why I'm even mentioning that. But it was funny stuff. The Knife Through Arm. First time I saw that. The first person I see do that on television was Simon Drake in The Secret Cabaret. It's around about the same time. And he does that one where he puts it in vertical. He goes into his arm that way down. I've still got no idea how that works, by the way. The Drake one, I haven't got a clue. That still fools me. I mean, I know there's something, but I don't, do you know what I mean? I'm not a dunce, but the nature of it is so... I've never seen anyone else... It's his own unique one, Simon does. He designed it himself. I don't even believe he sells it. I think it's just a thing he made for himself, but it looks incredible. He goes through his arm that way. Whereas Amazing Jonathan was the soaring into your arm. But again, he had one that was made different to the one that you get in the magic shops. When he did it, it looked like he was really doing it. You could sort of see how the blade came out, rather than the ones the magic you get. If you buy that trick from a magic shop, the Knife Through Arm, you get this clunky looking thing, this knife that looks like it's no knife you'd see anywhere. Michael Myers in Halloween would turn his nose up at this weapon, and it just looks blunt, because it is. But Amazing Jonathan's knife looked like a carving knife you'd find in a kitchen with a regular handle and a blade that was bigger. The blade looked bigger than the handle. So for those that know what needs to be done. It still fooled you. He'd carve it into his arm. Such a simple presentation. He just would come out, examine my arm, does it look real? Yeah. Examine the blade, does it look real? Yeah. Well, explain this shit. And saw it into his arm, there's blood gushing down, everyone's screaming, and then, it's a trick. That face he would pull. So funny, but funny DNA, do you know what I mean? Just walking on, he was funny. But a lot of the material's liftable as well. That's the annoying thing, because I've seen so many. I've lost count of the comedy magicians I've seen doing his stuff. Just help yourself, you know. Why wouldn't you? And it annoys me no end. But that's, you know, the mentality of the average comedy magician. You can't fight it. That's just the average, not the good ones, not the brilliant ones. You know, we all know they are. We all know who the good ones are. So, yeah. I'll tell you what it is as well. It's that feeling of an end of an era. Like, he feels like the last of those kind of rock and roll comedians you get in the 80s, the sort of highwaymen of comedy, you know, the Sam Kinison kind of Dice Clay, that sort of era when it was like really, you know, hard drinking, hard drugging comedy, talking about it. Hard men with hard lives, just giving it their all, talking about what's actually happened. You know, really, that brilliant sort of period. He seems to be the last of them, in a way. Because he went out that way. He didn't stop smoking crack. Do you know what I mean? He liked crack and he didn't quit. He was going to go out on his own terms, on his own feet. There's a documentary about him that I've not watched. I've got it lined up for tonight. I think it's just called The Amazing Jonathan Documentary. It's on Amazon. I had to throw £6 at them. I don't know, you might find it free on whatever streaming you've got. I'm going to watch that tonight. But in the trailer for that, he's literally sat with a crack pipe talking to the documentary maker. You know, he went out partying. He didn't stop. He didn't stop having fun, or his idea of fun. He didn't, you know. I don't know him. This is reading between the lines, but from what I saw of his presence online and how he would show up at magic conventions, I loved him. Yeah, but that last kind of proper highway to hell kind of comedian. Do you know what I mean? Like a proper, hey, like, raw. He talked about it in an interview. This is what really got me into him, was this interview he gave to Genie magazine. And in that interview, if you can track it down, which is fairly easy now, I imagine, online, that's one of the best. If I was starting out as a comedy magician now, I'd say read that. You know what I mean? To anyone, he really goes, because it's truthful. He talks about what the clubs are actually like. He talks about what the road is actually like. He talks about what it can do to a marriage and to a brain. He talks about his divorce. He talks about everything brilliantly. Drugging, the lifestyle. And the headband. Now, this is an interesting thing. This goes into me meeting him. He talks about his headband in this interview. He says that it became such a trademark. He used to wear a headband on stage, if you don't know. And it became such a trademark, he could decide if he wanted to be recognised out and about, he'd wear the headband. And if he didn't want to be recognised, he wouldn't wear the headband, and no one would recognise him. So if he fancied being Amazing Jonathan for the night in a bar, he'd put the headband on, and everyone would clock him. If he just fancied a night of being himself with some friends or whatever, no headband, and he never occurred to anyone. I found that interesting. That's a side of show business that fascinates me. Marilyn Monroe is a very similar story. Marilyn Monroe is walking down the street with a journalist, and nobody's noticing her. They're chatting. And the journalist says to Marilyn, I can't believe that no one's recognised you on this street. No one's said anything. And she says, oh, do you want me to become her? And the journalist says, yeah. And she couldn't describe what happened, but Marilyn Monroe's posture just shifted ever so slightly. And her attitude just lifted ever so slightly. And that in turn raised the energy around her. And the next thing you know, everyone, Marilyn Monroe! They're taking photographs, cars are beeping their horn, she's blowing kisses, she's smiling. She could turn it on and turn it off. She studied with that acting teacher. Oh, that's going to annoy me. Chekhov, not Chekhov the writer. There's two Chekhovs. The one that was an acting teacher. He taught Yul Brynner as well. And his method of acting was a sort of a mystical method that he had. It was very... whereas other acting, Stanislavski, it was all about remembering an emotion and then bringing it back and then using it for your work. Chekhov's thing was imagining something rather than drawing on something that you already had, imagining something over there that you didn't have and then stepping into it. It was a reversal of his way of getting into characters and stuff, one that I like the sound of. Not that I'm an actor, but if I ever was to become one, that's how I'd do it. And he taught her, but he had a weird, you can tell the actors that he taught, they had this sort of weird charisma and this kind of way of turning it on and turning it off. Yul Brynner was the same. And Jonathan was the same by the sound of things. Amazing Jonathan. Getting it back on point. So it's the 90s, my friends. I'm up in London, as is my wont. A young man. Young. Carefree. Absolutely skint. Working a shift. I was stacking shelves at night at Toys R Us. Just so I could have like £30 to go to London on a Saturday and visit the magic shops. With my magic mate, Lee Hathaway, was my magic mate at the time. I would meet him in London. We'd have a right laugh. We'd swap card tricks. We'd have a bit of friendly banter. And Bobby Bernard was alive then. And we'd normally go to Davenport, start out there, then just bomb around London and do stuff, you know. Think we were cool. Buying drinks, you know. Yeah, we're 18. And, oh, what a time to be alive. You get to London on £5 on a travel card. I went in the other day, it was like 32. Anyway, so we were running around London one night. We've beaten the magic shops. We've had a laugh. We've been swapping card tricks. We've been to Covent Garden to see the street performers, whatever. We're walking across Leicester Square. And Lee noticed him. I didn't. If Lee hadn't noticed him, this doesn't happen. We're walking along. Lee goes, "Is that Amazing Jonathan?" And I was like, "What?" And it was. He was coming out of the tube, out of Piccadilly Circus tube with his mate. And I recognised the mate because the mate was in Viva Cabaret with him. There's a bit he does where he's... let me get this right. This is all from memory. I've done no research. All from memory. So he comes on stage and the guys in the audience, and he goes to the audience, does some magic with him, sends him back, and he goes, "Sir, is this your watch?" And the guy goes like, "Oh," and the crowd's all like, "And is this your wallet here, sir?" And the guy's like, "Oh my," yeah, and takes the wallet back, and then he goes, "And is this your spinal cord?" And he rips out his spine, hanging there. And the guy flops to the stage and starts having a fit. It was a guy with long hair and like a Doug Henning moustache. His friend. Anyway, they were together. So they're obviously over filming or doing something. Because the guy's part of the act. Anyway, we saw them. We got to go and say hello. So we went over to them, walked up to them. And I said to him, or at least said to him, "Excuse me, are you the Amazing Jonathan?" And this is what I love. He stopped and he turned to face. He had the headband on. And he said to us, "Yes, I am." But like he did proper Amazing Jonathan delivery. I've got no idea if he was like that in life, but if he was playing it up for us. But either way, it was just what you wanted. And we're magicians too. We love it. We want to be professional performers one day. We're working up to that. "Oh, you need to do it, boy." Like really kind of like, "Oh, you'll never look back. It's a great life." You know. And just I can see him now. He was wearing a raincoat, like and blue jeans and white trainers and a big green t-shirt. Just looked proper 80s cool. It was the 90s, but he looked 80s cool. You know, he looked like one of those, what you imagine a comedian of that nature to be wearing. And then I said, I was watching you just 2 nights ago. You were on Channel 4 on Viva Cabaret because they were re-showing it. And he went, "They're re-showing that shit?" And I went, "Yeah." And he went, "Then I guess those sons of bitches owe me royalties." And that was the last thing he said, and he turned and off he went into the London night. I think he was going to the Comedy Store. He headed off in that direction anyway. And yeah, that was my briefest of encounters with the Amazing Jonathan on Leicester Square. But it's one of those ones that stayed with me ever. Like he's one of the ones that I met loads of, you know, I met many a famous person. And some of them stay with you, and that really stayed with me. Because he was generous to a fan. He was kind and generous. He didn't dash me off. He was kind and... He didn't dash us off. He was kind and generous to a pair of fans. Yeah, massive lesson in how to just be a famous bloke right there. So I was sad to learn this week that he passed away. Again, it's not a personal loss because I didn't know him, but it was just the end of an era, the end of a time, the end of a way of doing things, the end of a brain like that thing, that happening, that source of ideas has ceased. no more. It's now it's memories, it's stories, it's what it is when a person, moves on. Yes. So I shall miss seeing him on stuff. Yeah. He was a good guy in my experience, which was brief, but yeah. So this episode of Borderline is for the amazing Jonathan. See you on the next one.